They didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak. She's getting nothing. Dad hated her. That's what my sister Karen said the second I stepped into the room. No greeting, no eye contact, just that sharp, stinging sentence, projected loud enough for everyone to hear, like she wanted it to echo. The words hit my chest like a punch. My grip on my son Eli's hand tightened instinctively, and his small fingers curled around mine, warm and trembling. I forced a smile down at him, thin, shaky. But he knew. He always knew. I hadn't even made it to a chair yet, but the message was crystal clear. I wasn't welcome. I wasn't family. I was just a loose end they had come to cut clean. Karen sat at the head of the table, perfectly poised in a grey pantsuit. Her dark hair was pulled into that signature tight bun she wore when she needed to feel in control. Her lipstick, a sharp, bold red, was classic Karen. War paint for a battle I hadn't even realized I was walking into. Then came the voice I dreaded more than hers. Uncle Rick, Dad's older brother, let out a dry, bitter laugh. Leaning back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, that smug smirk of his spread across his face like oil slicking over water. Even her kid knows she's worthless, he muttered, nodding toward Eli like he wasn't even a person. Eli lowered his eyes to the floor. I felt something crack deeper inside my chest. Around the room, a few heads nodded. Cousins, old neighbors, so-called friends I hadn't seen in years. People who had picked their sides a long time ago. And I wasn't on theirs. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, like sandpaper. The air was thick with the scent of old dust, leather chairs, and whatever overly sweet perfume Karen had drowned herself in. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, loud, hot, humiliating. I led Eli to the farthest seat at the end of the long mahogany table, away from them all. The chair creaked when I sat. Eli climbed up beside me, his legs dangling above the floor, his small hands folded in his lap, as if trying to make himself invisible. Karen slowly turned her head toward me, and when our eyes met, she smiled. But it wasn't warmth. It was poison, dressed as pity. "You know this is pointless, right?" she said, voice smooth and ice-cold. "Dad rewrote the will, cut you out completely, said you were dead to him." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My tongue felt heavy, useless. I just gave the slightest nod, like I understood. But inside, why did I even come? I thought maybe, just maybe, there'd be something. A note. A line. A sign he remembered me. Something to make it all make sense. Instead, I was back in the one place I swore I'd never return to, surrounded by people who had made it clear they'd buried me long before they buried him. Just as I was about to stand and leave, before they started tearing apart the estate like vultures, the door creaked open. Mr. Connors, Dad's longtime lawyer, entered the room with a thick folder tucked beneath his arm. He looked just the same. Crisp suit, tired eyes, a face that gave away nothing. The room fell silent. Everyone straightened in their chairs. This was it. I braced myself for the humiliation. I had come expecting nothing, and was ready to leave with exactly that. Or so I thought. Because no one in that room, not Karen, not Rick, not even me, knew what Eli had brought with him. And with one simple sentence, he would unravel everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video he recorded," Eli said. It had been 8 years since I'd sat in a room like this with my so-called family. 8 years since I packed up what little they said I didn't deserve, took Eli, just 2 years old at the time, and walked away without looking back. Not because I wanted to come, but because I had to. Because every conversation with my father, Charles, ended in either silence or shouting. Because every family gathering felt like walking barefoot across broken glass while smiling for the camera. But now, here I was again, back in a room that still reeked of old cigar smoke and older anger. The irony? I hadn't even known I was invited to the will reading. The envelope arrived 3 days after the funeral. No message, no condolences, just the date, time, and address, typed in Mr. Connors's usual formal script. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake. Maybe they'd meant to send it to Karen, or maybe it was just one final cruel joke. But Eli wanted to go. He looked up at me with those wide, quiet eyes, his voice soft but certain. "We should go, Mum," he said. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." I don't know how a 10-year-old carries that kind of wisdom, but he does. Sometimes, I think he sees the world in ways most adults never even learn to. So we came. I wore the plain black dress I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral. Eli chose a little button-up shirt himself. That morning, I braided his hair with trembling fingers, and he told me I looked beautiful. He didn't know I'd barely slept, that my stomach was in knots, terrified to face the people who had treated me like I was already dead for the past 10 years. I knew what they thought of me. Karen, the perfect daughter. She stayed. She helped. She took care of Dad. And she made sure everyone saw her doing it. She told the story so many times it became gospel. Julia abandoned the family. Julia couldn't handle real life. Julia ran away. They never asked why I left. They never wanted to know. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. They didn't know that I walked away after refusing to stay in a marriage that was killing me from the inside out. That the day I showed up on Dad's porch, holding Eli and a suitcase, he looked me in the eye and shut the door without saying a word. The one person who was supposed to protect me from the world had become another wall I couldn't break through. And Uncle Rick, he didn't help. He was just Dad's echo, repeating the same bitter phrases. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Karen? She soaked up every word and weaponized them, turned them into a script, a story she could control. So I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Eli and me. We didn't have much, but we had peace, and love, and laughter. Still, some small, fragile part of me held on to the tiniest hope that maybe in the end, Dad had seen something, regretted something, left something behind. Maybe that's why I opened the envelope, why I came, why I was sitting here now. But as I looked around that room, surrounded by cold eyes and smug smiles, I felt foolish for ever hoping. Eli hadn't said a word since we arrived. He sat straight, his hands folded neatly in his lap, scanning each face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. His stillness unnerved me, like he was waiting for something. Then Mr. Connors cleared his throat and opened the folder. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, "Just get through this. Don't let them see you break." But Eli was sitting on something bigger than grief, and before this was over, he would prove he was the only one in that room truly listening to my father. Mr. Connors cleared his throat again, that lawyer's way of asking for attention without really asking. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the thick folder, and began reading the will like it was just another Tuesday. I barely caught the first few lines. Legal jargon, estate definitions, executor declarations. But my mind wasn't on his words. It was spinning with what I knew was coming. He wouldn't say my name. I was sure of it. Still, every time Mr. Connors paused to turn a page, I held my breath. Maybe, just maybe, the next line would be different. Maybe he'd surprise me. But no, It was all the usual suspects. To my daughter Karen, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face didn't move, but her satisfaction spread like perfume across the table. She glanced at her husband, Neil, who gave her a smug little nod, like they were already drawing up renovation plans. To my brother, Rick, the lake property, and all remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, chin lifted like a king surveying his new territory. He slid a cigar between his teeth and bit down gently, like he'd just claimed a trophy. To Paul, my nephew, the vintage car collection. Paul, the same cousin who once locked me out of my own room when I was 9 just to watch me cry. That Paul? I bit the inside of my cheek hard to keep my face from cracking. I could feel the tears pressing behind my eyes, hot, sharp. But I wouldn't let them fall. Still no mention of me, not even a footnote. And then came the line I had been dreading. And as previously declared, my daughter Julia will not receive a portion of this estate. There it was, plain, final, like a door slamming shut. I felt the impact like a blow to the chest. Under the table, Eli's fingers slipped into mine. I hadn't even realized my hands were clenched into fists in my lap. His touch pulled me back, anchored me before I drifted too far into that hollow place. I could feel my pulse pounding behind my eyes. My skin burned with humiliation. Then the whispers started, low but deliberate. Karen let out the softest scoff. Told you, she muttered to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head slowly, like the outcome had been obvious from the start. Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father, he said, louder than necessary. The others, cousins, neighbours, supposed family friends, didn't say much. But their silence rang louder than any words. I stared down at the table's wood grain, the lines spiralling and twisting like they were trying to pull me in. It was easier to look at that than their faces. I could hear my own voice in my head, flat and numb. Why did I come? Why did I think he'd remember me? And then Eli moved. He let go of my hand and sat up straighter. I felt the shift in the air before I saw it. His voice sliced through the room like a blade. Software, but certain. You forgot the video he recorded. The room stilled. Karen blinked. Rick turned in his chair. Mr. Connors froze, his pen hovering over the page. I turned to Eli, heart thudding, my brain a tangle of confusion. What video? I whispered. But Eli wasn't looking at me. He was looking forward, focused, unwavering. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, slightly crumpled white envelope. It was sealed tight. My name was written on the front. But beneath it, beneath my name, was my father's handwriting. Block letters, sharp, clear, unmistakable. For the lawyer, only if it gets ugly. I stared at the envelope in Eli's hands like it was radioactive. He held it so calmly, like it wasn't the most dangerous thing in the room. But my eyes locked on those words. Only if it gets ugly. Well, it had. My voice barely worked. Eli, where did you get that? He looked up at me with a face as steady as stone, his expression soft but unshakable. Grandpa gave it to me, he said. A while ago. He told me to keep it safe. My heart skipped. He gave it to you. He nodded once, sure and calm. The day we visited him. Just me and him. You were at work. I blinked hard, trying to bring the memory into focus. I remembered that day. Eli had asked if he could go with our neighbour to drop something off at Dad's. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they even spoke. Now Mr. Connors reached across the table. May I? He asked gently. Eli nodded, and handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Karen squinted, trying to make sense of it. Rick shifted in his seat, suddenly less relaxed, more alert. For once, nobody had anything to say. The envelope made a quiet tearing sound as Connors opened it. Inside was a USB drive, small, black, unremarkable. But my pulse kicked like it was a live grenade. Connors furrowed his brow and pulled out a note, too. Another page in my father's sharp, unmistakable handwriting. He read it silently, and for the first time since he'd entered the room, his professional mask cracked. Just slightly, but I saw it. He didn't speak right away. He nodded slowly, like something long unspoken had finally been confirmed. "Everyone," Connors said, his voice lower now, more deliberate. "There is a video message from Charles Thomas, recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only in the event of a contentious situation." His eyes flicked from Karen to Rick. They both shifted again. Karen scoffed, shaking her head. "This is ridiculous. He never mentioned a video." Uncle Rick leaned forward, his voice sharp with suspicion. "We don't even know what's on that thing. Could be fake." Connors raised a hand calmly. "It's time-stamped, authenticated. I recognize his handwriting and signature, and per his instructions, I'm legally obligated to play it." He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop on the desk beside him. The screen flickered, then settled into a black frame with a single white word. Play. The air in the room shifted. No one moved. No one spoke. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I gripped the arms of my chair like they were the only things keeping me from floating away. My breathing came fast, shallow, uneven. Why would Dad leave a video? Why give it to Eli? What could he possibly want to say now, after everything? Eli, on the other hand, didn't look nervous at all. He sat still, eyes locked on the screen, like he already knew what was coming. Karen's face had gone pale. Her lips pressed into a tight, bloodless line. Rick had stopped chewing on his cigar. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But more than anything, I wanted to know. Connors hit the spacebar. The screen went black for half a second. Then it flickered to life. And suddenly, there he was. My father. Older. Thinner. Sitting at his desk. Wearing that navy sweater I had bought him for his last birthday. The one I never knew he actually wore. His hands were folded in front of him. His expression, not cold. Just tired. Worn down. He looked straight into the camera. And then, he spoke. I didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when I saw his face. Not when I heard the first two words leave his mouth. "Hi, Julia." He looked older than I remembered. His skin had thinned. His once proud posture had softened. But it was still him, Charles Thomas, sitting at that old oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when we were kids. Only this time his face wasn't stern. It wasn't distant. It was human. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm gone, and I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." His hands were clasped. His fingers twitched slightly, a nervous habit I had too. "I didn't expect peace between you and the family," he said. "I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you." He paused, looked down, swallowed. And I was wrong. My breath caught in my throat. My nails dug into the chair. Eli glanced at me, but I couldn't look away. "I believed what Karen told me. I believed Rick. I believed you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen. Not once." His voice faltered, cracked, just barely. "You tried, and I shut the door in your face, On you and Eli. I heard Karen shift in her seat, sharp and uncomfortable. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I thought being strong meant being proud, that walking away was betrayal. But strength, real strength, is showing up. It's protecting your child. And you did that. You did what I couldn't. His eyes shimmered. My vision blurred. I met Eli one day when he stopped by. Just the two of us. He smiled slightly. That kid. He didn't say much. But when I asked him about you, he said, "My mum is the safest place in the world." "I lost you, Julia," my father said. "I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again." He cleared his throat, looked straight into the camera, and said, steady as ever, "So, I changed the will." There was a collective gasp around the room. Someone's chair creaked. Rick's, maybe. Karen muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make out the words. I could barely hear anything over the sound of my father's voice. "I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings. The retirement fund. It's yours. And a college trust for Eli. I know it doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive." He paused, then leaned slightly closer to the camera. "And if they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it, and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed." A lump rose in my throat, so big I could barely breathe. "I'm proud of you," he said. "And I love you, Julia. Always did. I just didn't know how to show it." And then, just before the screen faded to black, he added in a voice so quiet it felt sacred, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him. Thank you." The screen went dark. No music, no transition. Just silence. Pure. Still. Holy silence. Around me, a chair squeaked. Someone sniffed, but I didn't move. I sat there, hands still over my mouth, tears slipping quietly down my cheeks. Tears I hadn't even felt forming. It was like something I'd been carrying for years. Something heavy and invisible had finally been lifted. After all the noise, all the blame, the exile, the silence. He heard me. He finally heard me. And in that stillness that followed, no one could take that away. No one spoke when the screen went black. Not Karen, not Rick, not the cousins, not the family friends who once smiled politely while ignoring the weight I carried. Even Mr. Connors sat motionless, his hand frozen above the mouse, like stopping the video had stopped time itself. And maybe, in a way, it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand still covered my mouth. My cheeks were wet. But I didn't even notice the tears until I felt Eli's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with a small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting all along for the truth to finally find its voice. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big for words. Love, relief, grief, all tangled together. Across the room, Karen stood abruptly. Her chair screeched across the floor. She picked up her bag with trembling hands and walked out without saying a word. Her husband trailed behind, red-faced, mumbling something under his breath. Rick stayed seated longer, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally stood, he looked at Mr. Connors like he wanted to protest. But even he knew. There was nothing to fight. My father had spoken. His truth was now unignorable. The others followed. Some couldn't meet my gaze. A few offered quiet nods, pity, or maybe respect. I couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of us left. Connors gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, voice softer than before. But everything's in order. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. What could I say? He gave a small, genuine smile, then left us alone in the room. And the silence that remained wasn't the kind I had grown used to. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. This silence was peaceful, whole, like something had finally settled into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand, still looking up at me like I was the strongest person in the world, and maybe, in his eyes, I was. But the truth? He was the one who saved me. He was the one who carried that envelope like it was just paper, when in reality, it was truth. The truth that would rewrite everything. We stayed a little longer. I don't know why. Maybe I needed time to breathe. Maybe I just wanted to sit for a few more minutes. In the one room where, for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. In my head, I kept hearing Dad's voice. "I'm proud of you." 3 words I never thought I'd hear. 3 words I needed more than I had ever admitted. I thought about all I'd carried. Years of silence, of being blamed, of being erased. And now, I wasn't erased. I was seen, heard, remembered. I looked at Eli again. "Thank you," I whispered. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For being braver than me," I said softly. "For holding on to something that mattered." He smiled. "I just wanted you to hear him." And I had. Not just in the video, but in the shift that followed. In the peace that settled over the room once everyone else had gone. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always arrive when you want it to, but when it does, it changes everything. So no, I didn't walk out of that room broken. I walked out holding my son's hand, my father's words still echoing in my chest. I walked out whole. And that silence finally meant something. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been pushed aside, misjudged, or made to feel like your voice didn't matter, just know this: you are not invisible. And sometimes the truth takes time, but it will come to light. If you felt something while listening, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Stories like this only reach the people who need them most when you help them travel. And if you want more real, raw, emotional stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to tell. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your voice matters.